Alrighty, guys, welcome back to the Nutrition Coaching Secrets podcast. Very special guest today, coming at us from a U.S. military base out west. Man, we had just give you guys a quick little backstory. We saw that we've always had an interest in helping our first responders, helping our military, and we've always had a recognition that the fuel and recovery requirements for those populations are bastardized, to say the least. And so we actually had a base reach out to us, and we connected with them. And that's actually what led to this podcast today, because after a conversation with our guest, we realized that not only has NCI helped him go in and not only help this population, but really help to maximize them. And so I was very curious as to what is it that he has gone in and implemented, what changes has he made, what truly is the current state of nutrition in the military, and how can we optimize that? So without further ado, Mr. Mark Jones, welcome, my man. How are you, brother?
Pretty good. I appreciate you for having me.
Oh, dude, it is 100% our pleasure, man. I know I can speak on behalf of everybody that's listening to this, and thank you and everybody that you help, man, for your service and everything that you do to serve and to protect us as a nation. So very, very thankful for that, and obviously very thankful for your time today as well. Dude, give us a little background. How I know we were talking off air. You're out west. You service. I'm gonna fuck it up, so I'm gonna let you tell us. But you service a group of military, and you basically help them with nutrition and training. So walk us through, man. Where you at? What do you do? And how did you ultimately get there?
All right. So to begin where I'm at, I'm in both, Barstow, California, Southern California. I work for what we call an Army Wellness Center. I'm the supervisor out here. We've got a couple other health educators that work with us, and we got some health technicians. Basically, what we do is we take the basics of nutrition, the basics of fitness, stress, sleep. We look at everything, and with that job, like I was telling you off air, we start with the basics. We don't want to jump too far into it with like physique coaching and this and that, because a lot of the times we find people come in, they have no clue what carbs, fats, and proteins even look like. So we do start at that base level. Now we do get a little advanced if we want to later on, but that's sort of where the Army Wellness Centers sit. We start with the baseline, and then we, meet the individuals where they are in their journey, and then we help them, progress and get faster at reaching their goals. The way it started, I mean, I guess you could say it goes back to the time whenever I was in the military. I was in for 10 years, and I ended up getting out. I was never out here. I was actually stationed in Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, and I hated that place. So I decided to reclass and go somewhere else. And sure enough, 2 years later, they sent me right back to Missouri. So
oh, man.
They wanted me there for some reason. I was okay with it. So after I went back, I ended up getting out for some injuries that I'd had. And then one of my good friends, I was working at a gym one day, and she popped in and, she's like, "Mark, you should come work for us." It's like, "What do you do?" So she started explaining everything, and I was like, that's exactly what I want in my life. I want to be able to help soldiers in that aspect. Because whenever I was in, I was always the PT guru. I was always the one leading PT and like having fun with it. I would stay late, do the reconditioning PT, because it was just something that I was good at. So then, whenever I started working for the Army Wellness Center, I eventually got on with them. I remember it was in my first 2 weeks. I said, I'm going to run one of these places one day. I want to be a director at this place because I know I can have some impact. Yeah. So I've been there for 4 years now. I took this job last year, moved out to Southern California just to be in that supervisory role because I wanted to have more impact than what I did as an educator. So took it out here, and this is it's very hard to fill slot. Not too many people want to move to the high desert, so I took it, and honestly, I wouldn't look back on it. I think it's the greatest thing I've ever done.
Dude, that's awesome, man. That's awesome. Congratulations. And obviously, you said the words, I wanted to have more impact. Obviously everything we stand for, we say impact over everything. And so that speaks to me. It speaks to the heart of everybody that's listening from NCI Nation for sure. When you got out there, man, what was the current state of nutrition and training? Because like you said, a lot of these guys, they don't understand proteins, carbs, and fats for sure, but they're not alone. The general public certainly doesn't understand proteins, carbs, fats, the levels they need to. But I suspect being in the military, given the demands of what's going on in your daily schedule, and really, I mean, operating at such a high level, you need a much higher level of nutrition than your average person. So what was the situation you encountered? What were the goods? What were the bads?
So, and this is solely just coming from me,
Sure.
Not from a government standpoint or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
let's put our disclaimer out there.
Yeah, we have to. But there's around the globe, there's 34 active wellness centers. There's more that's in the works. So, I mean, they're all over the world working with the Army. From one location to the next, honestly, I've seen completely different things, with like the fad diets and this and that, and people trying to, do the cut weight and stuff. Whenever I got out here, it was a lot different. So the individuals out here, they do their training. It's a big training base. They go out, they stay in the field, weeks on end, and then they come back. And what are they doing whenever they come back? They're training their butts off because, the military's got strict regulations for height and weight, body composition. And then they've also got strict regulations that go into their physical fitness. So they have to make sure that they're performing. They have to make sure that they look good at the same time and are lean. So it's kind of, they're fighting against each other. When they're in the field, they're eating, and I'm not going to say it's crap food because it's actually good food,
Sure.
but it's not what they would want.
Right.
And I think that's the biggest issue is that they go out in the field, they carry a bunch of little snacks with them. You got your beef jerkies, your Pop-Tarts, and all the fun stuff that, you can just grab and go with. And they're not eating, quality foods out there. And then what do they do when they come back? They're stressed out. They have a lot of issues going on. They're trying to readjust for the week or two that they have back with their families before they go right back out and do it again. So during that time, we've got individuals trying to fight that body composition. And what do we do when we're fighting that? The normal person says, oh, you got to cut calories.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, not when you're training,
No.
when you're burning, thousands of calories because you're on foot every day with a rucksack on your back, or you're sitting in that hot desert, soaking up that sun. You're sweating your butt off. You're training, you're burning calories, and then you come back and you're restricting calories just to train harder to try to keep it. So the state of nutrition, I would say, it was horrible. But
that's putting it nicely.
And it's not everyone. There's a lot of individuals that really care about it, but it's just the implementation of it because, like I said, we teach classes, we do one-on-one health coachings and stuff like that. And we actually measure metabolic rate for the individuals, and we'll give them their numbers and they're like, why would I eat that much? Like, well, because this is what you're burning, and it's not that much. I'm talking like 25 to 3,500 calories, and people are still looking at me like I'm crazy because I'm asking them to eat that much, and they're over snacking on 1,600 a day.
Sounds like the general population.
It does. It really is, and I work with, some what everyone calls lifestyle clients on the sides, and I work with veterans that don't have access to our services on the side, and I have the same exact conversations with them.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing, though, when it comes to the military population that I work with and that I have worked with in the past, stress is a big deal. I think stress right there, the stress of being in the field, and then the stress of, not being able to train the way you want to, not being able to see your spouse, your kids, and on top of, this crazy pandemic, everyone's quarantined and they're out in the field, training their butts off. All that stress is just really compounding, and it's really doing a disservice in a sense to them, because then they come back and what do? They want to sleep, they want to eat, and then they want to go train for hours on end trying to fight that battle. But some win, some don't, and that's what we're here for the ones that are having those issues.
So I love the notion that you have like the wellness centers, that you guys have this education. I mean, you guys know, and anyone that's taken our stuff knows, we say education drives compliance. And so if we want the people in the military to really follow what we would deem to be appropriate nutritional protocols, we got to educate them. And I love the connection to stress. I don't think a lot of people really understand the overall effect of stress. How is the information received? Because I know when, the majority of coaches listen to this, they know that like when they go out and they meet Gen Pop, and Gen Pop's so used to hearing, well, 1,500 calories is how I get lean. And holy shit, how do you want me to eat 2,500 calories? Kind of like you were saying, it's met with a lot of resistance. Is it like that in the military? And is that a pursuit of vanity, or is it just simply like a lack of awareness? Because if I took on a military client, I would be looking at performance. Like you said, there's metrics, right? You got to pass the PT test. There's body comp standards. There's, it's fuel and recovery at the highest level, in my opinion. But how does that actually show up in application? Because you're on the front lines doing it every day.
So, I mean, I would say about 75% of them, they take it in, they accept it, and then they want to apply it. But there's a want, and then they need it, but is it going to happen? I've got clients, and like this past week, I had a class set up for Monday, and then at the very last minute, hey, these guys got called out to the field. I can't teach the class, which is fine. We have that happen all the time. But it was one of those classes that I had a higher ranking individual come out and say, look, we really need to cover this. We need to talk about this with my guys, and it was covering nutrition. Well, now that they're not getting it, they're back in the field for 10 more days. So that's just pushing them out even further. So, but the ones, whenever they do come to the class or they do the one-on-one education, they do accept it. And I think it's their lack of awareness of what's going on and what it is. I think that's the biggest thing that drives a wedge because, you know, and even with Gen Pop, what do we do? When we start looking at, oh, I'm going to fix my diet. Oh, I'm going to go buy a meal prep company and I'm going to get all of my meals. But then at the end of the week, you've got 7 meals left over, because you just couldn't fit them all in, or you forgot to eat, or this and that. And then when
Were
you
you
do,
afraid to?
yeah, you get stressed out because you just spent all Sunday meal prepping, or you spent all the money buying it. And then what happens there? Well, I just won't do that again.
Right.
So for us, I think the biggest thing that we do is, like I said, we start with that basic level. And instead of having someone completely switch to, you know, starting and meal prepping every meal, we pick the hardest one. We go after the hardest one. Is it breakfast, lunch, dinner, or your snacks? Which is the hardest one for you to go after?
Yep.
And then when they start, analyzing their own self, like, well, crap, some of them, it's like, I don't eat anything but dinner. Okay, well, which one would you rather eat? Would you rather eat breakfast or lunch? Let's focus on one. Because I would say, and even in the Gen Pop, when individuals don't meet the goals, they psychologically stress themselves out. They kind of
100%.
pulls back. So starting small, they say, like, I think what was it, 19 days creates a habit, and like
Yep.
3 months creates a lifestyle and stuff like that. We go after that lifestyle. Once they're good with that, breakfast, okay, I've implemented this and I've implemented this. Then we start looking at, their body composition. How's it changing? Because we use a couple of cool methods here. We use the bod pod, we use ultrasounds where we can truly get a reading. I
Yeah.
mean, I love it. Then again, from that bodybuilding standpoint, I could look at pictures of you and tell you if it's working or not. But individuals, when they see these machines and they're actually seeing that data, sometimes that drives a little bit more compliance with them. They're like, okay, well, something was off. And then we start on that refeeding site. We start adding a little bit in. Let's add some more food in. Let's do this. Let's do that. And I think, once we get them bought in that little bitty bit, then we start that compliance starts revving up. And then we've got them coming in every month or every 2 weeks. And it's super fun to see the change in them. And then whenever they change, what do? They send their battle buddies in. They send their NCOs in. It's like, okay, now we're flooded and I love it. But then they go back to the field. So that's kind of one of those things.
Is this a service that's paid for them? They get this for free, or like,
Every
how
bit
does
of
it
it
work?
is free. Yes.
Wow, that's awesome.
The military gives this to any, active duty service members, retirees, family members, and then we even reach out to some of the DoD civilians that's on the installation. They can come to us if it's within their money pot of, the insurance and stuff like that.
That's super cool, man. Like, good for man. Shout out to the military. That's amazing. Like, I think that they're starting to understand really the importance of this. I mean, I don't know how long it's been going on, but obviously the education only continues to get better. And I gotta say, I'm honored that you've chosen NCI as part of the education that you're implementing, man. That's absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
When we look at this, obviously we talked about the issues of, just not wanting to eat more, not knowing that you're supposed to eat more. We know that that's wrong from a prescription standpoint. How does that show up physically and physiologically? Because like you said, there are strict standards that have to be met. There's performance tests and there's body comp tests. What are we seeing as the primary problem? Or are we seeing people who are so overstressed they can't lose fat? Are we seeing people that are just under eating? Or are we seeing people whose performance sucks? Like what's commonly showing up at your doorstep?
So I think the biggest thing is the overstressors. And but the thing is, it's never a stress from exercise because they will get their exercise. I've got soldiers that come in the morning, they're doing PRT, with their units, with their groups, and then they come in during lunch, and then I'll see them again at the end of the day, smacking their jaws, with their friends over there doing some more squats. And I'm like, good night. I've seen this guy in here 3 times today. I love it. But then again, he'll come into the office or she'll come into the office and we start talking and it's like, you don't eat nothing.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing that, we really notice is a lot of fad diets. Whole lot of fad diets are jumping at us. And it's because, they're trying to get those crash diets in to dump the water because they're not going to test them in the field for their body comp. They're going to catch them when they're back home. So that's whenever, they've got to do all this drastic stuff just to meet the requirements to stay in because everybody wants to get promoted. Everybody wants to move up and everybody wants to get more money. And, they say it every year that soldiers don't get paid enough money. I was a soldier for 10 years, and I will agree with that on some aspects. Some don't. Some work their butt off. Now, some, on the other hand, they don't work so hard. I had a couple years where I was just breezing by, but
Yep.
then I had another few years where I felt like I was at work every day of the month, every day of the week for the entire month. So I think the stress is a big thing. And I think
Yeah.
it's more, like family. They don't have enough family time out here. And this is a home side station. So no one really deploys, I would say, from here. People, go to other installations and then they get ready for deployments and they go do their thing. Here it's more of a training base. So they would think, when you go to a training base, you're not going to be away from your family, but
Sure.
they're essentially deployed here, and then they go somewhere else, and then they really deploy, and it
Right.
really psychologically breaks some of these guys. And I've got guys that have been here, 3 and 4 different rotations. They'll stay here for 2 years, go somewhere else, and then they're right back. Then they'll go somewhere else, and they're right back. And it's just because the job that they pick within the military keeps them here. So
Yeah.
I think the stress is the biggest piece.
So when we start to look at an abundance of stress, I mean, we know from a nutritional standpoint, the fundamentals of physical change, and really the fundamentals of any kind of performance is basically stress and adaptation, right? We have to be able to adapt to the stressors, and you know, eustress is positive stress, right? Like not all stress is distress.
Yep.
And I mean, when we look at what we're doing, if we're trying to create a calorie deficit, that's a positive stressor to facilitate the adaptation that is, the oxidation, or the basically oxidizing fat as fuel,
Yep.
to burn, and to ultimately, from a client standpoint, to hopefully lose body fat.
Yep.
Right, like that becomes the adaptation that we desire. On the other side of things, we intentionally impose stress in the form of training
Yep.
to, either hypertrophy or get stronger or whatever it is. So when we talk about stress, and an abundance of stress, what is that causing? Because like you said, they don't necessarily want to be there because they're there all the fucking time.
Yep.
What is that causing physically, relative to their own personal lives as well as the demands of the job?
So physically, I think it's driving the body composition up. Their body
Right.
fat is going through the roof. I get guys that come in, and the military has their field methods where they'll tape the neck and they'll tape the waist, and
Yeah.
there's a couple others depending on male, female. But they come into us and they get in the bod pod and they're like, "Oh, I'm 1% over my screening weight." Okay, cool. They get in the bod pod, they're like 15% over, and but like they're getting direct measurements from that
Yep.
bod pod.
Yeah.
Which some scientists don't like it because you can throw the test off really quick.
Yep.
I'm not going to give those secrets out because I don't want to you in the numbers. But I think the biggest thing that I see physiologically is going to be the body. Their body composition is going through the roof, and then with their job performance, when you have that high body fat and your stress is through the roof, you're going to be sluggish. You're going to be slower, and then that's affecting the job standards. So what does that cause? That causes longer days, and with those longer days, more stress keeps piling up, and then it's just a big ball rolling downhill, picking everything up, and it's about to crash. So
Yeah. Yeah. Now, as you mentioned, man, and we haven't talked about it on the air, but off air, you and I were talking. You've been in the game quite some time, man. You did the bodybuilding, you did the powerlifting, and you love this industry. I think the same way. Anybody that works with any population in this space, like, you have to love it. You got to have passion, or it's gonna eat you up. There's enough good quality coaches, I think, in the world today. That if you're just a shitty coach, you're going to be exposed, and you're not going to be here very long. So clearly, you have the passion. What was it that you learned at NCI, right? And I'm gonna have Tommy, actually, if obviously you learned the EAM model that we teach. If anyone else is interested in learning, guys can go check out applywithnci.com. But what was it that you learned coming to NCI that has made a successful transition, going out and serving the population that you've been helping?
honestly, it's finding what the ultimate goal is. I think it's awesome. You got to pick where you want. Are we looking for that body composition, or are we looking for that performance standard?
Yeah.
When and I've used it for years, but then whenever I heard you guys talking about it, whenever I went through the nutrition coaching level 1, I was like, well, that kind of sets with me because I talk this. I love this.
Yeah.
But I have so many people when they're looking at that, what the triangle of awareness, they're looking, they're saying, "Oh, I want to be here and here."
Yeah.
They're all over the place.
Yeah.
And I'll tell them straight up, hey, give me 6 to 8 weeks and I will get your body composition where you want it.
Yep.
Give me 6 to 8 weeks, I will get your performance where you want it. But if you want to do both at the same time, I need 30 to 40 weeks. Okay, because that's a slow battle and you're going to have some ups and downs and we got to figure it out. When I tell them that, I'm telling you, people sit back in their chair and they just look at me like, why so long? Well, and then that's when we start having those, physiological talks. And then we start talking about how we've got to train at certain intensities. I had a client that come through and I love this guy to death. I say he's like my best success story. He came in and he was dead set on, this is the program I'm doing. This is how I'm going to do my nutrition. I was like, cool. All right, do your stuff. He came in a month and a half later, gained a little bit of body fat, and I was like, all right, man, any health coaching? And he was just adamant, no, I've got this. I've got this. Well, month 3 rolls around and he pops in. He's like, all right, Mark, what do I do? So I sat back and I was like, all right, are you ready to sit down? Are you ready to dump what you're doing? And what he was doing was high intensity training in the morning, high intensity training at lunch,
Oh
and he was
Lord.
restricting his calories like crazy. I'm talking,
Oh,
and I'm not talking, I mean, this guy was about 235 pounds. He
sure.
was a big fella. Like to be in the military, he was back in the day. He was heavy in the powerlifting and sort
Yep.
of let himself go. So we've all seen where that goes.
Oh yeah.
Um, so we started talking, and I was like, so first thing, we're pulling all this high intensity cardio. If you're going to keep your calories there, we're pulling the high intensity cardio. And I basically went bro science on him and was like, all right, low intensity every day.
Yeah.
And that was the only way that I could actually work with him because he was not going to give up and eat
Yeah.
more food. That was not going to happen for him. So I pulled it back and I started doing that. And he was like, well, can I do at least some high intensity? A couple weeks later, and I was like, yeah, sure. If you eat more food, that's the deal. We need to get you eating more food. After we did that, we started looking, his numbers started dropping. And then I started playing around with the macronutrient composition. I started
Yep.
looking at his protein and I slowly talked him into, let's get more protein in your diet.
Yep.
But his dietitian was telling him this. I sort of had this talks and we worked directly with the dietitians.
Sure.
I let them do their thing. I don't step in whenever it's like that, but he eventually said, no, tell me what to eat. Tell me how to eat. And when we finally, devised the plan and started increasing his protein, scaling back a little bit, on his carbs and fats just to get him in the right spot, it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then over the course of 7 months, he went from 41% body fat down to 30.
Damn.
And it was amazing. This guy came in, he lost 5.5 inches off his waist. He looked like a brand new man. And the best part of the story, was this individual had come to me, and I didn't know this until midway through. He was actually on his second round of what they call the ABCP, so the Army Body Composition Program. He was in the midst of getting kicked out of the military because he had been on that program twice.
Oh
And
shit.
his unit basically just said, nope, go do PT on your own. You're fine. And they stopped doing the reconditioning with him. That's when he came to me. I didn't find this out until about 2 months prior to my final meeting with him. And I loved it because at the very end, right before I was getting ready to move to California, he said, okay, well, I want you to write me a letter of recommendation if that's okay. And I was like, yeah, for what? What job? He's like, oh, not for a job. I want to stay in the Army. Based off these numbers, I'm doing good. And I was like, well, yeah, you're doing great. You're losing body fat like it's going to stop. So then I wrote him a letter of recommendation based off the results that we had and based off, how hard he had been working, and they approved it. He got to stay in. Now he's looking at retirement. So
Dude, that's
you-
amazing.
it's awesome to see stuff
All,
like that.
all just because of doing it the right way, man.
Yeah.
Like, and I guess that's what's crazy is, I think that maybe it's just my own filter. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I think we look at the military and we think, man, they got it together. And now, obviously, I know I've worked with plenty of military people that need to pass the PT test, and
Yep.
now 90% of the time, though, they come to me at like 6 weeks out, and they're already
Yeah.
they're already on like 1,200 calories. They're already
Yep.
training 3 hours a day, and I'm like, how do
Yep.
you want me to get you more fit and lose body fat? Like, it's a much longer process, and so
Yeah.
it ends up being a magic show of sorts if we can pull it off. But man, I love the notion that they're providing just that long-term education and really that it's widely available.
Yeah.
Let's talk performance, man. Because like you said, the majority of people that do come to you, it is body comp. But like when we look at performance and obviously from a periodization schedule, when we talk performance in season, it's fuel and recovery.
Yep.
What are we fueling? What are we recovering from? And then, when you're out in the field, I imagine the food that you're getting is limited. How are you able to facilitate that on such a limited quantity and even quality of food?
So, with the AWCs, we don't directly go after foods. We can say, hey, that would be good to throw in here. This would be good to throw in here, but we don't just say, hey, go eat your oatmeal or go eat
Sure.
potatoes. But and that's that whole, got to be a registered dietitian, side of things too. So
Yep.
what we do is we talk about the healthy things. So like oatmeal is very easy. There are packs of oatmeal you can literally put in a shaker cup and get ready, throw some protein in there with it, and that's an on the go meal. All you need is water, and they have water everywhere out there. It's readily available. So if they're not getting, quality stuff in their meals, and it is very limited, and a lot of them, they don't want to eat the MREs. They can't stand those, and I don't blame them. They're disgusting. I mean, they get you by, but it's just one of those things. So we talk little foods like that. A lot of guys, they dehydrate their own meat, and they carry their own jerky out there the way it's not overly, saturated with salt and all that stuff. And
Yep.
So we have some of them making their own meals. Some of these guys, they'll take out protein shakes. They're taking tuna packs out there and making sure they're getting enough of that. But when it comes down to the carbs and stuff, we're looking at like oatmeal packs, and I have the guys take it out. And the ones that are doing that, they come back and they're not changing in a negative light, I would say. They're actually maintaining what they went out there with. Then they come back and they have the ability, from everything that they've ate, they're not crashed when they come home. It's just another day. They just worked a long shift. And then they can go to the gym and perform at higher standards compared to those that go out there and they look at the food and they're like, I'm not eating this. And what do? They go back and eat little Debbie cakes, and they eat, all the Snickers and stuff they brought out with them, and then it's melted, So those guys right there are the ones that I'm having the trouble with and trying to get them to understand, we have to plan. We have to plan these meals. Not, I tell them I can't give you a full plan because I don't know when you're going to be able to eat.
Sure.
Some jobs, these guys don't even get to see the food that comes out. They have to take their own food out there.
Yeah.
Because they're in, certain parts of their training. I haven't even been out there to see the training, so I really don't know what they're doing. But from what I'm told, they don't even get a chance to see that food.
Yeah.
So,
no,
we have to look at, in the long run, what do we take out there? So we're talking the performance, talking the carbohydrates up and saying, hey, if you want to perform at a high level and you want to get through those days and you're working 20 out of those 24 hours, you got to fuel yourself properly. We're starting to look at the carbs. And, then I've got those, keto individuals who want to run the keto side, and that's fine. I let them do what they got to do. I don't promote it, but if they're going to do it, I'll give them, some information on it and let them do what they want.
Yeah.
So, but they do, and it's okay. So,
yeah, it's crazy, man. I have to imagine you've seen it all in terms of crash diets that come your way. I think anybody that operates in the nutritional space, we've all seen it come our way. I would think that there's a little more importance when it ends up showing up on your doorstep because being out in the field, keto in a performance setting with HPA axis issues doesn't seem like it would go well. It's a lot different being in a battlefield than it is like playing basketball on a basketball court. A little more at stake. But to kind of switch gears a little bit, you mentioned how many wellness centers are there in the globe?
So we had like 35. They're asking for a few more. We just dropped one off because there was a similar program. So they're restructuring everything. So right now we're around 34, 35 off the top of my head. I have to go back and look.
34, 35 of them, though, like realistically, and obviously there's soldiers all over the world. There's, I like to think at some point there's going to be a decent amount of military that listens to this podcast. And if you had to give advice to anyone out there that's either considering getting into the military, that is in the military, that really is just lacking structure with their nutrition and their training, how would you tell them to go about it when they don't have access to somebody like yourself, when they don't have access to an NCI coach? What advice would you give them?
Honestly, I would tell them to start small, track. There's so many apps out there that you can download and use yourself. Like I started with an app and I started tracking my own training, started tracking my own nutrition just to see where the changes were. And that's honestly the first thing that I have everyone do with us. And I've got a few, what we call virtual clients that they're not close enough to just pop in and go to an appointment. They live 4 hours away. So I talk to them, virtually. We do Zoom meetings and we talk about it. I have them track everything.
That's still part of the military program?
What's that?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. That's still part of the military program?
Yep. So we can do virtual as well for individuals that are way out. So a couple of these guys, they're down between San Diego and LA. And while it's not that far of a drive, sometimes that can be a 4 to 5 hour drive, depending on traffic.
Oh yeah, I've done that.
Yeah. And we've got a couple that come from Vegas too. That's a 3 hour drive.
Sure.
So the first couple visits, we're in person, we talk to them, and then it's like, look, you don't have to waste your gas. You don't have to do all that just to come in and chat. We can go face to face, and it's so much easier.
Yeah.
And then it allows them what? Less stress. They're not on the roads. They don't have to leave work. They don't have to take time off. So it's really good. We do that with some of our retirees as well. And the guy that I was telling you about earlier, my superstar client that I love, I still talk to him from time to time. So I mean, heck, he's back in Missouri. I've been here for a year, and I've talked to him 3 or 4 times this year just to make sure he's still on track and he's doing great. But I would say, when we, yeah, I think did that answer the question, or how far did we?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I love the notion of start small.
Yeah.
I think if I could add my 2 cents in on top, I think it would be to really understand the role of stress.
Okay. Yeah.
I think if we go back, I mean, we're 30 minutes into this podcast, right? And I think that the word stress has come out a million times already,
Yes.
and and rightfully so. I mean, look at the environment, look at the volume of training. Like you mentioned some things that often, in my opinion, go unnoticed. You're away from your family, you're missing your family, you're in bases aren't in the biggest of cities all the time. You're in a town where you're like, what the fuck am I even doing here? There's a lot that goes on, and a lot of that is just baseline stress.
Yep.
And now we're talking about needing, not even desiring, but in some cases needing to facilitate certain adaptations, whether it be body fat loss, whether it be performance increase, whether it be cognitive function, whatever we got to increase, whatever we got to improve, whatever adaptations we need to fuel, they are not going to happen in an abundance of stress. And so I think that when we can get a population, especially the military population, to understand what stress truly is, because I just think that stress is so misunderstood. People are like, well, how is me waking up away from my family stress? Well, how is it not? Like you're thinking about them when you go to bed, you're thinking about them when you wake up. It's not a positive mindset in any way. It's something that is literally elevating cortisol because there's a bit of fight or flight response to it. And we start to understand stress, the cascade that it triggers, which obviously cortisol, HPA axis. We all understand that from the NCI course. Dude, I think that the fact that you've gone back to that so many times just shows me all the soldiers you're helping, all the military that you're helping, the veterans you're helping. That's the single biggest thing that I think really all specialized populations, but especially the military, have to understand, man.
Yeah. And, I think, when we start talking stress, we do like, deliberate breathing. We do guided imagery, visualizations. Like we teach some of those things to them in a stress management setting.
Sure.
And, I'll tell you, military members, myself included, we do not like to talk stress. Someone brings up stress. What does that trigger? Behavioral health. Behavioral health, it has a stigma across the board. So people don't even want to be associated with it. So I take a different approach whenever I talk stress and talking the sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system with these guys. So, in the morning they get up, they rush to PT, they do all their physical training, then they rush home, they shower, they snack, and then they rush back to work. And everyone thinks super fast paced just to sit around. So what do we stay in that sympathetic domain the entire time. So what I talk, and I've got a couple units here at Fort Irwin that I love because they're doing it. And what they do is after their PT, they just basically lay down, breathe. They sit there. I tell them, if you just go to your car, turn the air on, turn the phone over, turn the music down, and take 5 minutes, practice deep breathing, practice visualization. And then I'm telling you, it's going to be so much better. At first, people did not accept that. They did not want to hear it. So I slowly brought that up in every class that I was teaching. And someone finally reached out and they were like, I like that. I think that would work. So we started making his squad do it. And then, I'm giving them those, reasons why. You're not going to digest your food if you're in that sympathetic state. If you're constantly stressed out, you're not breaking down all that food that you're throwing in there. So that's stressing the body. It might not be that psychological stress, but it's physiological stress that will cause other actions later on. So I look at it that way. And the more people that start to buy into that, I'm telling you, it's game changing.
Dude, I love that notion because I think, we often, again, not to take lines that we've said before, education drives compliance, right? I think the way you educate has to be in a manner that connects to your target client. And
Yeah.
I love that you say, if you go in the military and you speak to anybody in the military and you start talking about stress, it triggers really negative reactions.
Yes.
So, you go to Gen Pop and you start talking about stress, they immediately understand it and it's not a negative connotation. So,
Yep.
obviously maybe you speak about it from cortisol control, like you said, sympathetic, parasympathetic nervous system, but you speak it almost at a language where it's very non-intimidating. It doesn't connect to anything negative in their lives, and obviously that's how you produce positive results. And I think that's just another aspect of you being a genius coach, in the sense that you understand, listen, this topic has to connect to you, but the way I articulate this topic is what's going to determine if it actually connects to you. And I think that's beautiful, man.
Yeah. It's funny. I had a retiree. I loved her to death. This was back at my last station. And she came in. She was trying to lose body composite, body fat. So we're trying to alter that body composition. And she was training during lunch. She was working out in her office. I thought it was super awesome. She'd close her door, she'd work out, and then she would take the last 5 minutes to eat her lunch and then open her door right at 1300, just ready for her clients to walk back in. And I think we went like 3 months, no change, no change. So what I did, and I didn't want to change her program because I didn't want
Right.
to throw her and tell her, "Hey, go to the gym and do this," because she was comfortable in her office. So trying to meet her where she was, I was like, "Let's try this. I want you to take 5 minutes. Stop at 45 after. I don't care if you're done with your workout. I don't care if you have to write off a couple of them and say, okay, fine. At 45 after the hour, I want you to sit down and I want you to take 10 minutes and I want you to breathe. Turn the lights off and breathe." And she did that. Over the course of 2 months, she ended up losing 3% body fat.
Dude,
Just because she
fucking
was
breathing.
it's nuts, right? So just because she was implementing something, relaxing, a little bit of de-stress, it was perfect. So she started doing that. And then, I don't know what happened. She just gave me a high five one day. I never seen her again, but she was awesome.
Dude,
She
that's
was.
awesome. That's amazing, man. And again, it goes to show, as a coach, thinking outside the box, understanding. I'm a big fan of understanding principles, being able to deduce the actions that are responsible for how these principles are negatively applied, and then being able to turn those around. And that's very clearly what you did. You understood the reason this individual is not transforming is an abundance of stress. I can't speak to her about an abundance of stress because she ain't gonna fucking listen. But I can add something in that, in the absence of her direct awareness, still provides a reduction of stress and will ultimately facilitate the desired adaptation, which is what you were able to do. And that's just a beautiful thing, man. And really speaks highly to who you are, to why the military is lucky to have you running this wellness center. And man, like, I hope that it just continues to improve the quality of education across all the wellness centers. And dude, I'm incredibly thankful for what you guys do, honestly.
I appreciate it.
My father was a formal contractor. He was in the Navy, worked as a contractor for the Navy until he retired. And so, I've obviously had a big spot, in my heart for the military. Hopefully in crazy times in the world right now, everybody has lots of respect for the military and what you guys are doing. But I think that the cool part is, as a society, as a culture, we're really starting to see the need for improved health and fitness initiatives, and not just saying we need to be more healthy, not just saying we need to be more fit, but doing it in a manner that we know is going to work. No more bullshit fad diets, no more
Yep.
crazy fucking workout protocols, and but really something that suits the individual, man. And
Yep.
it's really cool to see. It's really cool to see how far you guys have come. Man, we call this the Nutrition Coaching Secrets Podcast, and I asked our last guest this. And so before I ask you the final question, real quick, where can everybody find you and your services?
So for me, outside of the Army Wellness Center, I actually run my own business. I just started it. I'll say, while I was an educator, I felt kind of odd double dipping and
Sure.
providing the same services after. But now that I'm a supervisory educator, I don't really have my hands, in the field as much as I want to. It's more business side. So for me, you can get me on Instagram. The process is what I call the business. So you can look up the Process Fitness Solutions, or you can find me at the Process P3 on Facebook.
Okay.
That's going to be the easiest way to get a hold of me if anybody wants to chat, talk, do whatever. Right now, I'm going through the process, which California is crazy to set up a business. It is,
Dude, just
taxes
go,
are
man.
insane.
If the government's not listening, man, you need to go incorporate another state, because I
Right,
don't
I do.
I don't
I
want
need
to
to
see
go
you
back to
lose
Missouri for a little
60% in tax.
bit. But yeah, so that's where you can find me for now. And then my mission outside of here is I want to work with veterans, those that don't have access to, the Army Wellness Centers, because you have to be a retiree, you have to be on the insurance basically. So a lot of guys, they get out before, you know, I would say something happens, they just get out of the Army. They're like, I'm done with
Yeah.
this. I just want to go to civilian life. And then while the VA is taking care of them, they don't have that insurance. So I try to take care of the vets on the side and give them the same, service. And I've got a few guys that I'm working with right now, uh, all across the United States, and they're actually doing pretty good, and I love it. So if anybody
Very
out there
good,
wants to
man.
reach out and talk to me about that, if I do not serve you, I will definitely learn how to refer you out. So,
And you said at the Process Fitness Solutions, correct?
yep.
Okay, so Tommy, if you don't mind, man, throw that up on the screen while I ask him this last question. It's just at the Process Fitness Solutions on Instagram, guys. Reach out. Listen, I can tell you this interview is taking place because Frankie that works for us, he reached out. He saw that they were talking about the education they received. We reached out. Mark was super nice enough to reach back out, and we wanted to feature his work here. I mean, really. I've learned quite a bit about you and your approach, and it's really cool to see you doing the right thing. And obviously, anybody that's in the military is probably hearing a slightly different approach right now than what they've used to. So, guys, if you're a military, if you're a vet, if you know someone that is, I encourage you for sure to reach out to Mark. Again, it's on the screen right now at the Process Fitness Solutions, and we'll get you set up there. So, like I said, though, this is called the Nutrition Coaching Secrets podcast, and I really believe every coach has one secret up their sleeve that is their kind of go-to, and that they know if someone implements will change their life. I want you to share, what is that one secret that everybody needs to go out and implement, coming from Mark Jones himself?
We've talked about it this entire podcast, honestly. And I think it's, as far as coaches, as far as, clients as well, we need to understand more of the stress. We need to understand, how deep breathing actually regulates us, and gets us primed for, that recovery process, gets us primed for, that next bout of high intensity, because especially in the military, and you're not going to talk about this, for days, from back in 2008, whenever I was deployed, we would go on a mission, we'd come back, and we wouldn't think about it, but then like 4 hours later, we'd have to go back out on another mission. So if we don't practice those recovery processes as soon as we're done, like right after our physical training in the morning, if we don't start that recovery process, something could happen, and then we're just going to be worse off. So I say, my trick would be start with the breathing. Everything begins with breathing, and then after that, you can pretty much, go anywhere, I guess you could say.
So, guys, straight from the man himself, the man that is helping save our soldiers, serve our country, and the man that has helped quite a few recover from serving our country. Guys, understand the value, understand where stress sits in your life, and understand and prioritize recovery immediately post any stress-inducing activity, be it training or otherwise, and set yourself up for success. Dude, it's an honor. It's a pleasure. I know I've said thank you several times, but I'm gonna say it one more time, man. Thank you so much for your time, for your service, and just for who you are, and being willing to pay it forward, my man. I look forward to a lot of people reaching out to you, bro.
Yeah, hey, and I appreciate you guys. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for the things you guys are doing. The content's amazing. I just started the hormone, course with you guys, and I'm loving every bit of it so far.
Awesome.
Probably watched it 3 times. So
You probably
I
need
mean,
to catch all that.
yeah, it's a lot. So, but it's pretty good, and I'm learning how to implement that. So I look forward to more courses with you guys over time.
Awesome, man. Well, we're honored to have you. Guys, Nutrition Coaching Secrets, we appreciate having you guys here. Once again, that link, if you are interested in learning the model of success, it is applywithnci.com. We put together a 14-minute video for you guys really to learn what we do. Go check it out. If you feel compelled, schedule a call with us. We'll talk to you more about it, and get you guys on the same path as Mark, and get yourselves out there helping create impact. Guys, as always, it's Jason, your host, Nutrition Coaching Secrets, reminding you, choose impact over everything.